Hello and welcome to the Edge of Search podcast. I am your host, Shona B. I am the Senior SEO Strategist at BioWire Digital, and I am the co-founder of the Edge of Search conference. Today, we are talking with one of our 2025 speakers, Amanda King. She is the founder and principal consultant of FLOQ, an independent SEO consultancy based in Sydney, focusing on product-led strategy. She has over a decade of experience in SEO consulting and implementation. She has worked on global and national blue chip brands both in the United States and here in Australia. She has also got experience in data building, implementation, reporting, conversion rate optimization, as well as content strategy and creation. Not to mention, she is an international speaker and has spoken at conferences including Ahrefs Evolve, Search Marketing Summit, SMX Munich, the SEO Collective in both Sydney and Melbourne, and now Edge of Search. So welcome, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining us on stage back in September and for being here today.
Of course, it's my pleasure. I always find that folks that are able to see the holistic picture of SEO and the fact that it's marketing and kind of touches everything is really important, particularly now with kind of everything that's going on in SEO as well.
Yeah, I always like to say SEO is kind of like the one that has a finger in every pie. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's something that I think people kind of forget about.
Yes, so they're just like, oh, you guys like do blogs, right? That's like kind of it.
You do the keyword stuff, right?
Like it's all keywords. We'll obliterate that today. I'll give you your opportunity.
All right, fantastic. But yeah, no. Let's get into it. How did we want to discuss things? What do we want to start off with?
Well, why don't we start with learning a little bit more about you? How did you get into search?
I fell into it, honestly. So after I graduated uni, I had an English lit degree and I taught English in China for the first year after I graduated uni. And I was looking for a job in like random hostels in Northern Europe. And it was either going back home and living with my parents or going back to my uni town. And I found a listing for a copywriter at a marketing agency in my uni town. And so applied to that. I think had the interview at in the hostel kitchen in Amsterdam or something silly, and got the role, came back and started doing that. And then that was at the point in time where SEO was all about keywords and exact match keywords and keyword stuffing and all that fun stuff. Aging myself here, and because it's been closer to 15 years. It'll be 15 years. No. Yeah, it'll be 15 years. No, it was 15 years in December. So I've been in SEO for over 15 years now. And so they were like, we're at a point where it's easier to teach someone who knows how to write SEO than someone who knows SEO how to write. So I just got pulled into SEO from there and just kind of kept going.
Yeah, look, I think that's yours is obviously way more cool, like with Amsterdam and teaching in China and all those things. But I feel like that's such a classic SEO story. For my own job, I was doing like copywriting, and then that led me into SEO. I think I started at a similar-ish time to you.
Yeah, it is always an aging thing, and I think that does kind of play into this sense of deja vu that I'm really getting at the moment, where the helpful content updates and all of that I was hoping would be like a Panda 2.0, where it was just Armageddon and Google would level the field and be like, nah, none of this like super AI slop generated content that does nothing. But it didn't get to that point, and I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like this, just there's so much of it, and it's one of those things as well where every extra page costs Google money.
Yes.
And like that is going to get to a point where it's not going to be good anymore. And like so much more of your content is just going to be, whether it is AI generated or not, it's just not going to be listened to. But yeah, search and And search is in a weird spot at the moment right now as well, because at the end of the day, Google is going to win the AI race because they are printing money. OpenAI isn't printing money. Claude isn't printing money. Grok isn't printing money. Well, maybe Grok kind of is printing money, but they're, but
let's not
like,
talk.
no, no, like Google has the headroom to figure this all out over a longer time period than a lot of the other large language model AI companies. But we are in a very liminal space right now where they are still trying to figure out how to monetize it. And that comes both in terms of like, how do we allow people to advertise against this? And how do we make it less expensive for us to run these queries? Because what is it, like AI mode queries are like, I can't even remember the number, so I don't want to throw something out there, but I feel like, incrementally like much more expensive to run for Google than a standard search. So yeah, we're in this very kind of liminal space where they're almost kind of in an arms race against themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, especially now, like with AI mode as well, where it's like you've got the initial query, and then you can keep expanding
Yeah,
on that single search over and
yeah.
over again, and get potentially queries of, you know, tens of words
Yeah.
or longer. So yeah, it's definitely going to get expensive. We'll see how they deal with that. So you did dive into a lot of that in your presentation,
Mm,
state of search. You also touched on semantic search and the concept of entities,
yeah,
which is going to bring us back to that mini keyword variant we had before. So, what
yeah,
is semantic search, and what are entities in search?
sure. The the easiest line to draw, it's not the most exact, but the easiest line to draw is essentially think of entities as it's a combination of like a discrete concept or like a discrete topic essentially. So like the example, and it's really all about context. The example that I gave in the Edge of Search talk that I did and that I kind of consistently return back to because I'm a foodie and a travel nerd is if I were researching things to do in Paris and I was looking online at, travel recommendations or various kind of travel bloggers, and someone wrote an article talking about things to do in Paris and didn't even touch on like Notre Dame or the Louvre or even like croissants, I would be like, well,
Have
what
you been to
what
Paris?
reason is there for me to trust that you've actually done this thing?
Yeah.
And the whole concept of semantic search and entities is that kind of topical context. Think of it as kind of Google's own Wikipedia. And that semantic search essentially gives them the ability to have that informed context. Whereas before that, and if you look at Google's patent language as well, it's interesting because lexical search, which is that one-to-one, like single keyword to single document relationship, they from the very beginning they identify as a problem to solve. So they have always been trying to get to semantic search. It just like took them a decade or so. So it like it is just that they are trying to represent as much as possible the way a human thinks and those kind of trust indicators and those intent signals. And so that's what semantic search is. And that's kind of like that Paris entity, for example, would have Notre Dame, would have the Eiffel Tower, would have croissants, or like that would all be a part of that seed, essentially.
Yes. One of the quotes that I particularly loved from your presentation,
Yeah.
and I want to print it out. I want to make it like a motivational plaque. I love it so much. Um, Inherently, it makes less sense to think of SEO in silos, only limited to the text and HTML on a website property, because
Yeah.
Google doesn't and
Yeah.
hasn't for a long time.
Yeah.
Which I love this because I think it speaks so much to the message of Edge of Search, where we want to break down silos and we want people to be working more collaboratively. And I think SEO is the way that we do that.
Mm.
But can you expand just on that quote for me a little bit, how you think
Yeah, of
search
course.
professionals should be approaching visibility and optimization now?
It's a bit of a catch-22 to a certain extent, right? Because our current reporting platforms, even the ones that Google manages, Google Search Console, report on keywords. There is no easy way to report on entities and entity visibility, or even like the concept of a brand, really, except for maybe something like share of voice, which some more enterprise level tracking tools will do, but it's not something that is kind of an out of the box standard reporting element, and it is not the level of specificity that we have trained our stakeholders to be used to with SEO. So it would be another kind of re-education element, but it does come back to this whole concept of entities and the knowledge graph and kind of Google's own Wikipedia, because again, part of the way that we think as individuals in terms of trust signals is we look at third-party review sites, we look at forums, we look at social media. Like, those are all signals that Google is now able to take into account when understanding how much credibility to give to a brand or an entity. Like Jess Schultz, one of her standard kind of pieces of advice that I steal because it's a good piece of advice is that basically it takes Google something like 30 encounters across different parts of the internet to be sure that the brand that you say you are is actually the brand that you are. And again, it's like, if I were to introduce myself to you as Amanda or as Liz or as Cecilia, and every time I did, I slightly changed my appearance, how sure would you be that I am any one of those individuals and that those aren't each unique people or unique entities? And that's all a part of it. So the concept of entities and semantic search is really closely related to brand and your properties on the internet. So one of the first roles that I had when I was in digital marketing and SEO was online reputation management. And this now feels so much more like online reputation management, where it's like, for your brand, right? You go and you search brands, PTY Limited, X, whatever. And it's understanding what you're visible for and what you're coming up for. Like, is your Instagram profile performing really well? Is your X or your Twitter profile or your LinkedIn, or is maybe, a third party review site that you haven't claimed, is that coming up on the first page? Like, those are all things, those are all properties, whether you own them or not, that you should be aware of and actively managing if you have the ability to. And if not, then the conversation becomes, well, do we need to create some sort of asset to be able to positively manage that visibility, or to control that space and that brand encounter with Google, rather than letting it be managed by some random Joe Schmo who bitched about your website 15 years ago. Like, and that's part of the other thing as well, is that Google's over reliance on Reddit recently is bringing problems, because it is pulling threads that are 10, 15, 20 years old. And then large language models like ChatGPT don't care about the timestamp either. So there's a lot of kind of management and digging that needs to be done in the public archives for your brand, and also the owned assets that you control for your brand. Like, if you're an enterprise site and you've still got press releases on your site from 2013 that are talking, like, I remember at Optus, we encountered some random archives that were talking about transitioning from 2G to 3G and what that looked like. So like there's that kind of stuff as well,
Yeah.
where unless you recognize it and actively manage it, and like, I don't know, if that was something, if that press release for some reason was ranking really highly, like I wouldn't necessarily get rid of it, but I would almost turn it into like satire or some sort of brand piece where like, you know, you'd add some sort of header being like, welcome to the time machine, folks, or something like, you know what I mean? Like it would be, that would be like a brand play. So yeah, that's where it comes in, where it, your brand is, and your brand entity is your entire footprint in search, whether it's an asset that you control or not. And it's, yeah, it's messy, but it is unfortunately something that is coming under the umbrella of SEO a lot more strongly now with AI and everything that's happening there as well.
I think that comes back to what you said before about deja vu, because I remember when I got into SEO 13-ish years ago,
Yeah.
um, brand authority was the big topic. Everyone was talking about you had to have brand authority because Google loves brands, and that was like the whole thing. So you were wanting to create, topical authority so that your brand was like the authoritative voice in that topic. And um it's kind of funny, like with AI search, I feel like none of this stuff ever actually went away. So like you've touched there as well on the digital footprint,
Yeah.
which just makes me think of, 9-ish years ago when I know he's a contentious figure, but Neil Patel was really pushing the omni-channel
Yeah.
digital marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now, all SEOs are talking about is distribution and getting, cross-channel strategies and things like that. So, um, it feels very like I feel like I'm back 10 years ago. Like the fundamental level of AI search is at. It's like forcing people to go back. I feel like we got distracted. You
We
know,
did.
we got
We got
distracted.
distracted. We got distracted, and we're about, like, we don't need to go into this in too much depth, but we're about to be distracted again, I think, by agentic, or about to be pulled back into a bit of a different cycle with agentic as well, because with AI, you kind of have, and with like even just Google at the moment, you kind of have two ends of the spectrum, and we need to find a balancing point between both. So there is this push for the semantic understanding of the brand and like the authority there, which is absolutely 100% important. But with agentic, what's happening is agents, and those agents are truly machines, truly very black and white. And and they completely rely on the technical build of your website being correct and 100% to spec. I think, what was it again? Jess here did a major study on, I think, like 1,000 agentic searches, and only 17% actually hit hit the conversion,
Yeah, I
like
think
got
that
to
may have
that
been
point,
less than that.
or less than that.
Yeah.
And so there is going, also along with this push for brand, there is going to be this massive push to clear your tech debt and actually have a website that is to spec, and you're going back to WC3 compliance and like all of those things, and accessibility, and like that is all going to become a lot more important as well, in terms of not just being to current spec for a technical, readable, like HTML website, but also those enhancements around much more comprehensive schema markup and potentially a rich feed that is, correctly sending to Google Merchant Center, but also available to ChatGPT and Gemini as they start partnering with whoever they partner with. I think Gemini inked a deal recently, Google inked a deal recently with PayPal for like actual end-to-end checkout for, but like there is going to be a kind of like tension there between brand activity and really proactively rebuilding your website, because the big shiny thing has been JavaScript frameworks, and I hate them. I hate them. I hate them so much. Like anyone who's building a an SPA or like a PWA, like, oh, I hope they're not doing it. But even like React and things like that, it or Next or Gatsby, like those all have unnecessary kind of fuck arounds when it comes with actually displaying stuff in the DOM. And like, but anyway, like that, I could go on a rant about that. So I'm gonna leave that to the side. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be an interesting tension in terms of how we determine what to focus on with AI, because part of it will depend to a certain extent on how popular or what the kind of flywheel looks like with the uptake for agentic and how ahead of the curve a particular brand wants to be with it.
Yeah.
Because that is a bit more of an existential question. Like it's new enough that I don't think people are sure how long it's going to stick around.
Yeah, or if it's gonna get off the ground, is it gonna be
Yeah.
successful? And I think I mean that just I brings up so many points in my mind. Firstly, like I saw someone say the other day, it's probably a little while ago actually, that technical SEO is having a renaissance because
Mhm.
of AI. Um, and it's really, I think, also for me highlighting the massive technical gap that marketers generally have.
Mhm.
And even like, I think the majority of people working in search, there seems to be a really, really big gap
Mm.
in that technical knowledge. But also, like, I think what is now starting to be highlighted that people have kind of taken for granted for a long time is this expectation that SEO is just this one thing,
Mm.
and so you can just get like one person to do it, and we've ended up being these like kind of like unicorns for a lot of businesses, and it's like no, you're just like overworking these people because the truth is that SEO is so broad. It's this lens we're applying to all these different areas.
Yeah.
It's how do things. So coming back to the point you were saying about access and agentic, search. What the SEO lens is really how do these crawlers and bots and now agents, how do they access
Yeah.
your content? How do they make sense of it? How
Hmm.
do they then categorize and index it? And then how are they going to serve it up to users? Or how are they going to be able to complete their mission if it's
Yeah.
an agent?
Yeah.
That's the SEO framework. That's the lens. And that has been true since, the longest time, right?
Yeah.
Since Google started actually becoming a robust search product.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like really you need teams.
Hmm.
You need people who absolutely they're technically minded and they are fully immersed in that. You need people who are brand minded and they're fully immersed in the search area aspects of that.
Yeah.
We've touched on PR so far. We've touched on content. We've
Yeah.
touched on
Yeah. Yeah. It's
right.
not a small field of impact, unfortunately.
No, it's absolutely not. And so it's. I think what is going to happen is with AI is it's really going to highlight, and it already is, all of these massive gaps everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Gaps in your knowledge as a search person,
Hmm.
gaps in your teams that you've just been expecting your poor, one man band SEO person to fill. Uh, it's going to highlight all of these. It's going to be a gap illuminator, I
Mm.
think.
Yeah. And I think for the folks that are currently SEOs that feel like they have a technical gap, honestly, my advice would be to use the tools themselves, like go to ChatGPT or go to Claude or go to whatever your personal preference is of large language model platform and start having a conversation. Claude for code is probably one of the better ones if you feel like you are limited in your technical understanding. Like, just start spamming Claude and just be like, hey, like, and have a spin up a website and test it. I mean, my general perspective is that every SEO should at least have a personal website. So even if your person, like my personal website, I think is like a page,
Yes. Yeah.
but like if I were, younger in my SEO or a bit less sure of some of my skills, like I would literally just pull together like a whip page and work in public and just say, hey, like I'm testing out X, Y, and Z. Like, what is this? Like, what does this do? Like, can I use Claude to walk me through how to write something in SQL or how to create some really specific schema markup or like, and just like, and then rather not just kind of like, yeah, going through and doing the process and like copy and pasting the code or whatever, but then going back and actually looking at it and trying to understand the syntax or the logic. I don't like, for me, I'll be entirely honest. I've been wanting to learn Python for years and I haven't.
Who has the
Like
time?
I've ended up using Claude to write Python for various projects and things. And I know enough about code structure and how that works to question and to understand maybe when things are missing. And that is kind of the point of literacy. I think everyone should aim to be at, is to know enough to be trouble, essentially, to know enough to ask the right questions. And that is absolutely something that you can use Claude or ChatGPT or whatever as a vehicle for. And if like with Claude or ChatGPT or anything as well, like it lowers the threshold of embarrassment as well. Like
Yep.
it's just you and an NPC essentially. Like you have no reason to be embarrassed asking the most basic questions to to like a large language model, because they don't care. They're not embodied.
They don't think anything of you.
No.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I think it's all the stuff you just said there about like, just go make that website,
Yeah.
test what works. That is such a fundamental aspect of like the SEO mindset because this industry developed sort of on its own. There was no
Yeah.
formalized education. Literally, what is best practice is all of these things that people in our industry have tested and shared with each other, and it's like survived the slaughterhouse of practice,
Yeah.
right? And it's come out the other side. We're like, this is the stuff that works. Um, Even when Google says it doesn't, but it does, and we know it. We have the proof. Yeah. Um, so I was like, I feel like that experience and that history
Yeah.
as murred in um, you know, maybe some negativity as it is. I think it really places search professionals in this great position with everything that's happening in AI to like really lead these
Mhm.
conversations and lead digital teams to be like, how are we going to integrate this? How are we going to move forward with it? What's the process going to be of figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and how this is going to integrate into our current like processes and workflows?
Mhm.
Like search professionals are the ones who are they have the experience of dealing with just insane levels of uncertainty constantly
Yeah.
to then like manage this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and 2026, I don't think is going to be any different. And it's something that I mentioned in um, the 2026 kind of like forecasting podcast that I did last week with Peter Mead and a bunch of the Australian crew. But I think honestly, the shape of 2026 is going to depend on how quickly Google can do what we were talking about earlier in terms of getting out of this liminal period of how do we make AI mode or AI or whatever more integrated into the day-to-day 10 blue links searches of Google, because right now it's really expensive, it's really computationally tiring. Like, and I mentioned this in Edge of Search, but like Movera, that whole concept of being able to do that in a much more consolidated and dynamic way, it's that kind of thinking and how quickly that can be integrated into the broader kind of search algorithm. So I would say whoever is really kind of paying attention to the patents and looking to step into like Bill Slawski's shoes and help manage that, even folks like Brody in terms of monitoring the changes to actual SERP results, like I think that to me is going to be the leading indicators of how 2026 is going to turn out, because that's the dependency to me, is how quickly Google can kind of get their shit together, essentially.
Yes, absolutely. And just carrying on the LLM train of thought
Mm,
here, because you, as you said, you come up through you got a bit of experience with content and things like that,
yeah,
and people are obviously there's been a lot of panic this year over the death of clicks,
yeah,
particularly top of funnel informational queries. So I know a lot of people are asking, and I'd love to get your view on this. Is there
yeah.
still value in trying to rank for informational search queries?
I think we fundamentally need to change how we define informational queries, because for a lot of people, informational queries were like the broadest of the broad kind of informational elements, like what's the tax year, right?
Yeah.
And like what just at a fundamental level, why would you expect anyone other than a government website to be visible for officially telling you what the tax year is? Like, it doesn't, again, if you just step back and look at it from like a societal, like human perspective, rather than like an internet, I want traffic perspective, like why would anyone other than the official governing body defining what the tax year is want or need to be visible for that kind of query?
Yeah.
And that is something that Google is starting to be able to kind of actualize, where it's like, it doesn't make sense that random Alex from Sydney tax accountant, or like tax accountant software, or Xero or Stripe or anyone else kind of playing in that space actually has any visibility for this query, because they have no say in whether or not it actually changes. They're just reporting to you the information. And again, that comes back to like brand authority and kind of semantic understanding and entities and all of that. But like, I think that also shows that we've kind of just fundamentally misaligned informational queries, because we have been chasing traffic for so many years, because that has been such a metric, and we've not necessarily been looking at what makes sense for our business. So I would try going back to that. And in terms of informational queries and things like that, base it off what your sales team are saying people are asking about, your support team are saying people are asking about, and answer those questions and have those more specific, more nuanced, more your kind of informational queries be what you respond to and what you address on your website. Like, it is not, and even like think about it as, Xero or uh, Fiverr or whatever, like, does it even make sense? Is it even valuable for you to rank for that? Because is that, does that even make sense for your brand?
Yeah.
Like, so it's a bit of a shift in thinking around informational queries, again, because we use the metrics that we're given, and traffic is an easy metric. And it may not necessarily be the most reliable metric. It may not necessarily be the smartest metric, but it's a metric. And I also think fundamentally SEO and SEM have always gotten kind of lumped into the same, like, this is a digital marketing thing, therefore it must be really easy to measure. But SEO is a lot more aligned to traditional marketing and brand than it is to bottom of funnel work. So there's a lot of unlearning, I think, that needs to happen with SEO and the way that it's measured and the way that it is invested in, because it isn't a bottom of funnel kind of channel. And yeah, it can impact CRO, and user experience can play into SEO, but it's a partnership. It's not a this is the same thing.
Yeah. Again, it's a lens we apply. You touched on some UX principles there. I feel like
Yeah.
I need to like send out a bingo sheet with this podcast to be like, when a UX principle is mentioned, whenever a brand is mentioned, whenever content is mentioned, whenever PR is mentioned, just to like drive the point home, No prizes. I'm not giving
No
out prizes,
prizes.
just so
No.
everyone's aware.
See, my thought process for 2026 is anytime anyone has an AI focused presentation, I just take a shot, and I will, like, that would be very dangerous, but I feel like I may have to do it on principle. Just
Yep.
see me having a shot at like 10 a.m. in Munich, and I'll just be like, oh no, oh no.
I'm here for it. I personally celebrate this. No, but oh God, so many things that you said then, like, it did sort of ping things off in my brain.
Yeah,
Firstly, it's like, I think this is the other thing, I was saying before. I feel like AI is kind of becoming a gap illuminator. I think it's also really lifting the veil on just how murky attribution has always been. It has never been clean. It has never
no,
been straightforward. I remember saying to clients, nearly 10 years ago, you know, whatever you're doing in terms of whether it's Google ads or it's SEO, you kind of really do need to think of it as part of a larger marketing budget. And if you're getting a return on that budget, that ultimately is like it's cash in, cash out, right? Like that's really,
yeah,
you can't measure these things so directly. Like, yes, these specific actions lead to X number of sales, you
yeah.
know?
And just something to mention, because Alex Schultz, CMO of Meta, just wrote a really good kind of primer on a lot of solid marketing strategies. And we were chatting about a bunch of stuff before the book released, but one of the things we were chatting about was measurement, and um, talking about how incrementality is probably the best representative measure. And I was like, wait, people don't measure incrementality. So that's my 2 cents
I
to the
mean,
conversation as well, is incrementality and looking at change over a discrete period of time, ideally year on year, because there's so much seasonality for so many businesses. But like, incrementality is also really important, because as you said, nothing is accurate and everything is relative, and that is just something that we need to keep reminding folks about as well.
oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, if you're not talking to this in your reporting, I think maybe this is one of the key takeaways for anyone watching is talk to what's happening economically, talk to the seasonality of the business. You can't just have endless growth. I know capitalism tells you you can. It's lies. All right. Like
Yeah.
everything happens in seasons, everything happens, as you said, incrementally. And so being able to see long term, sustainable, positive change,
Yeah.
whether that's growth in revenue or it's, increase in brand awareness,
Yeah, and to your point as well, like if what you're doing is keeping your organic channels at the same spot as they were last year, look at the incrementality of change against the rest of the other channels. Like if your entire website visibility is down year on year and you've maintained, like there's an incrementality there as well. So again, it's all about comparison and comparative analysis and that infinite game of doing better than you did before, or when was a product launch, or when did a product get sunsetted, like again all kind of business context and market context that, like, as you said, like should be incorporated, if not into your explicit report, your reporting context and the way that you present it to your stakeholders, because that's stuff that they care about and they should also be aware of.
Context is king.
Yeah.
Not content, context. I mean, content's important, but
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also what you said about with like traffic as well
Yeah.
before, it sort of pinged in my brain as well. Like, I feel like that's also indicative of just kind of how we talk a lot about data driven decisions.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of what we've done is like it's really just like a numbers game. If I just pull in the most amount of people, I can increase, the odds of what percentage of those people might click,
Mm.
right? Like I feel like that's been kind of the tactic that people have been using for a really long time, and now
Yeah.
AI such as like, if your brand is, really visible and people really enjoy engaging with you,
Mm.
then you might eventually get the click, and the click is going to be much closer to that conversion point,
Yeah.
because people don't need to click for the research phase as much anymore. They don't need
Yeah.
to, So I feel like, yeah, there's so many things, so many things.
Oh. Yeah.
Um,
No. Yeah.
yeah, I
Lots of
get you.
things.
I feel you. Yes. Now, another great quote from your presentation was, and sort of coming back to how kind of SEO is a finger in every pie type of
Yeah.
situation. Think of the information Google can curate, but not create themselves,
Yeah.
which is rich media experiences. And I love this because one of the few comforts that I am clinging to personally with AI tools is that they are not creators, they're not
Mm.
thinkers, they are curators of the information that is available to them.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on this with you. What are the elements of rich media experiences?
Look, honestly, one of the primary vehicles for rich media experience is gonna be video, right? Because, and that is something where, again, that's all a part of thought leadership and topical authority and your entity establishment as a brand, is pulling your experts out of the shadows and putting them in front of the camera, even if that's like, I'm thinking of stuff like Will It Blend?
Yeah.
Like that is, and like, you're one of the fabricators at Nike, like cutting open a shoe and talking about the anatomy of it, or like going into detail about how a custom saddle was created, or the like the actual manifestation of the expertise or the experience. And again, the easy example here, and the one that I tend to lean on when I'm talking about this in presentations, is Google can't embody itself and go to that cafe in Paris and tell you how good or bad the croissant was. Like, they can fake it with AI, but like actually physically doing that thing and having that experience is not something that they can do. So, which is why you will see for, review queries and things and review searches in Google, is why you will see the TikTok videos and the Instagram videos of the person at the restaurant doing the thing. Like, it still cannot physically have that experience, and it is it recognizes that, but it recognizes that people find value in people having done that. And it is another trust vehicle that they're looking to expand on.
Yes, 100%. And I think we're already starting to see the fatigue in people around like AI art,
Mm,
for example. People aren't impressed by it,
yeah.
and they're over it. They don't want to see it. And, it's like you said, people want to see what people can do because that's inspirational, right? And also aspirational. I can't ever aspire to do what an AI does, right? So there's
Yeah.
nothing that inspires me inherently because I could never compete. But a human who is flawed, who's had to go through the process, who's had to go through the hard work, who's
Mm,
had to put in the time and the effort, that inherently is like value. And so I think we tend to be more inspired by that because A, we can aspire to it. And B, it's we see the value because we value our own time and we value our own effort and that reflects back to us. So I
yeah.
feel like, yeah, the Google was onto this before AI was coming out. They were going to introduce, what was it, the experience filter, which eventually became the forums filter. And it is about elevating human created context. Content. Um, so yeah, I think that's a really great note for everyone. Get into your video. It's why we're here, right?
Yeah. And that's also that's cert verticals coming into play as well. So those are all of essentially all of the different surfaces that Google and all of the different like platforms that Google pulls into search results now, and those traditional kind of 10 blue links. So it's things like YouTube and Instagram, TikTok, Twitter or X, even LinkedIn posts, and like various different industry specific, like Rotten Tomatoes, and like things that will get you invested in kind of all of the different presentations of information that Google is now pulling into traditional search. I hate calling it traditional search because we haven't had 10 blue links in like a decade,
So long, so long.
but
Let's just say contemporary SERP.
but like it is, again, having visibility in and kind of a finger in all of those different pies. I think social for SERP verticals in particular is probably the most important, but then you do also have things like Google Scholar and like news channels and various different, it depends on your industry and it depends on what is important to people within that industry, where it makes sense for you to invest your time in showing up in YouTube or somewhere else. Like that's also something that is an easy shortcut with stakeholders and with people, is actually to sit down and say, okay, what does this search look like today, and not what you have in your head that it looks like, but is actually what it looked like 5 years ago.
Yes. Yes, 100%. And also I think it's going back to some really core analog sort of marketing principles, which is go meet your audience where they are.
Yeah.
That used to be billboards on freeways where people were driving a lot. It used to be TV ads because people were, guaranteed to kind of be on at certain times of the day. And now it's like, well, we know people are spending quite a lot of time on all these different platforms. We have ways of measuring that. You can
Yeah.
find your audience. So I love that concept of SERP verticals. Uh, we've touched on it a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted to kind of get uh, your personal take. So you said before, if you're kind of trying to figure out where AI fits into it, you really just kind of need to be using these tools. Um, so how are you working with AI tools as part of your work at the moment?
Yeah. So obviously, for clients, I have to monitor visibility, and there are a couple of different tools. Kind of the easiest entry level one is pricing wise is Peak, PEEC. It's for the cost. I want to say it's like 20 or 40 US dollars. Like it's pennies compared to what other enterprise level tools are charging, which is like in the thousands a month. And obviously have to kind of monitor, but also what I'm using AI for is more creating tools to make my kind of most rote analyses easier. Like one of the things that I'm doing is, pulling Google Search Console data into BigQuery and then doing a brand non-brand split analysis over time and looking at trends, like that kind of more black and white, here are the rules, do the thing kind of analysis. I'm building tools for myself rather than, yeah. So, and hopefully they'll be available to the public at some point, aside from my topic research tool, which is understanding all the kind of, understanding all of the principles of semantic search and entities and trying to help people think a bit more journalistically and kind of, again, back to more human principles, and something more aligned with that kind of semantic context that we've been discussing. But no, yeah, in terms of how I'm using AI in my day-to-day, I'm using it to create tools to make that kind of really rote black and white analysis take up less of my time, basically.
And if anyone would like access
Yeah,
to that tool, just send me a message. You could send Amanda a message, DM her
yeah,
on LinkedIn, and she will send you access because it's a
yeah,
very cool tool. Um, we have lots of different kinds of keyword tools out there, and some of them touch on topic, but not quite to this extent where it's actually let's like get back to good content. So
yeah,
reach out if you would like to give that a try.
absolutely.
All right, last question for you.
Yeah.
Marketing agencies and consultants, in-house marketers, there's lots of stuff happening for all of us at the moment. So if you had to make a recommendation, how should they be looking to evolve or upskill moving into 2026 with all the changes that are happening?
Sorry, that was a big sigh because I'm trying to think in terms of like one piece of advice. This is this is kind of going to sound like I'm going against all of the advice that I've just given, which is essentially like SEO is fundamentally the same. It's marketing, like it is what it is, and we need to get back to that foundation. But my advice for people in 2026 would be adapt or die. Like if you haven't
Brutal.
already if you haven't already started kind of upskilling yourself and understanding the foundations of how AI and large language models actually work and how you can leverage them in your day to day to make your life as a marketer easier, you will probably be replaced by a large language model. Like it, there is this point in terms of the depth and seniority of your understanding where if you cannot surpass the tactical to the strategic, you will be replaced. And we need to have a really firm understanding of large language models, how they work, how they can be leveraged, how they shouldn't be leveraged, what makes sense, where we think things are going, to be able to speak to that at a strategic level. So like I realize it's contradictory sounding, but I think 2026 is going to kind of be that fulcrum year where the people who haven't already figured out how large language models and AI impacts their marketing career may be dead in the water.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's contradictory at all. Like we've touched on, SEO being a lens, right?
Yeah,
And again, it's that how does it access? How does it make sense? How does it index? How does it serve it up? They're essentially the mechanics, that we need to understand about all of these. It's what you should understand about search products. It's what you should understand about large language models. And if there's a new future AI technology that comes out that doesn't rely on LLM technology, as I know some people are working on,
Mm.
then again, we need to take that framework and apply it to understand like how, as you just said, how do we create for this? How do we leverage how it works? How should we not
Mm.
leverage it? How should we not try and gamify the system? Because that only works for a very short window before the Google gods or the AI gods, as we now have, go, no, we're not going to deal with that anymore. Right. So I actually don't think it's contradictory at all. I think it's super on message. So thank you. I appreciate
Of
that.
course. No, I'm always happy to be the bad cop in terms of both reminding people that SEO is marketing, and then reminding people that you need to be able to adapt still and understand the full context of the world that you are working in to be able to continue to be relevant.
Yes. 100%. Thank you so much for your time and answering all these questions. It's been fantastic.
Of course.
Um, if anyone wants to get in touch about the topic tool from Amanda, please reach out.
Mhm.
Um, and don't forget to follow us. We've got different social channels for Edge of Search. We have a website that's amazing. And we do have super early bird tickets available for next year as well. So please check those out. And I hope to see you all in 2026.